Our next guest is an analyst as well as the director of scouting for TSN. He worked in the NHL for the Minnesota North Stars, the Dallas Stars, the Calgary Flames, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Spent some time growing up in Pierrefonds, the same city where I play hockey. No big deal at all. It is a tremendous honor to welcome to the show Craig Button.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to join you guys. And one of the things that I try to impress upon people right across this great country of ours is that hockey connects us and it connects communities. So, to be asked to be part of your show, it's a real honor for me as well.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor for us too. And we got some good stuff here.
Yeah, but you want me to take a rundown what we're doing? We're going to run through each Canadian team. Like we mentioned in the intro, Craig works for TSN. We're going to run through every team and ask Craig whether he thinks they're a playoff team or not. So we will start with, I don't know if they're the team talked about more in hockey than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Craig, are they a playoff team?
Yes. And, earlier in the summer, I would say that, without knowing that David Krejci was not coming back to the Boston Bruins, I would have said, okay, they might be in a little bit of a challenge. Florida's a real good team back in the Atlantic Division, along with the Tampa Bay Lightning, which we know. And, Boston is still formidable. But when you lose two players, Tuukka Rask, who's going to be out for a period of time, and whether he signs back with the Bruins or not remains to be seen, and David Krejci, an outstanding centerman behind Patrice Bergeron, I think that clearly opens up the door for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Because let's not forget that the Maple Leafs have a really good pair of defensemen, two pairs of defensemen, Riley and Brody and Muzzin and Hall. And then that forward group is still formidable. They can score. I mean, we all know that the questions around the Maple Leafs are what can they do once they get to the playoffs. But I think I see them as a playoff team. And I think that everybody can wait till April, if you're a Leafs fan, to see if they can improve upon the last five playoff seasons, because the last five playoff seasons have been a no-go in terms of winning a playoff series.
Yeah, well, the next question for me was, playoffs, they've had an easy time getting in the playoffs pretty much since the Matthews and Marner era. Do you think this is the year they finally get out of round one?
No.
No? Too many good teams.
I think there's too many good teams, and I don't think they're better than Tampa Bay or Florida. So that means that's their first round matchup, one of those two teams, and I don't see them being better than those two teams, and I don't see them being able to beat those teams in a 7-game series. And I don't think it's a lot of talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. I have no problem with that core four of defense. I have no problem with that group of forwards led by, Matthews and Marner and Nylander and Tavares. We know they've lost Hyman and whatnot, but I still think it's a formidable group. But I think they're too thin. I think when you start to go through, the challenges of trying to win a playoff series and try to wear down a team, I don't think they have the capability. And, last year they tried to add some players and, I certainly thought that they made some nice additions. I mean, they're hoping that Nick Ritchie and Andre Cachet, two free agent signings, can help them. But I think they're too thin. And I think it comes back to the salary cap, the commitment of dollars to too few players that doesn't allow them to have to be thicker, deeper in their lineup. And if you're not deeper in your lineup, you come up against real good teams that are deep, you have a tough time beating them.
Yeah, I know, for sure. There's some deep teams. But before I let John ask about Montreal, Craig, you work in a business where you got to make a lot of predictions. You're right a lot of the time, but when you're wrong, there can be a lot of backlash. This year, it pretty much went viral when you predicted the Toronto Maple Leafs to sweep the Montreal Canadiens. I think you said Montreal would be lucky to win a game. And then Montreal comes back to win the series in 7. What was the backlash like after that?
Well, here's what I would say. So it's always interesting. I joke about predictions. You can only be one of two things, right or wrong. So there's no middle ground on a prediction. And, you look at how the Toronto Maple Leafs had played going into the playoffs, how the Montreal Canadiens had played going into the playoffs. We're not talking about a week into the playoffs. We're talking 2 months into the playoffs. So, it's a bold prediction. It's a cheeky prediction. But I heard about it right after game one when Montreal won in Toronto. So I heard it right after that. But what was interesting was after game four, when the Montreal Canadiens had scored a total of 4 goals, they were down 3-1. It was crickets coming out of any supporters of the Montreal Canadiens, as it should have been. I'll be straightforward with you. I was shocked at that point in time that it seemingly looked so easy for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But then then Montreal found their game, and they found a strength in their game, and they found a belief in their game that, quite frankly, the Toronto Maple Leafs never were able to find an answer to. And so ultimately, after game 7 and that big win in Toronto to move on, I'm lucky because there's crows right in my neighborhood. So I was able to, gather a couple of crows, and I roasted them up on the barbecue. I got some wine recommendations to eat with crow. But I'll tell you what, eating crow is part of making a wrong prediction. And when you're making it against a fan base as passionate and as strong as the Montreal Canadiens fan base, there's no other way to face it but straight on.
Yeah, well, I'm a Habs fan, and no Habs fan thought they were going to do this. They looked really bad going into the playoffs. And your prediction, frankly, was what most people thought. So you definitely can't fault it. And speaking of the Habs, what do you think about them going into the season?
Well, going into the season, I mean, you look at it, and Carey Price, who's admitted that he hasn't been as healthy as he needed to be. He had the knee surgery, and he feels that that's going to help him a lot. I think that Jake Allen. I got the Buffalo Bills quarterback on the mind. Anyway, Jake Allen was a great addition by Marc Bergevin, because I think it took a lot of pressure off of Carey Price, and I think they have a great tandem in the net. You lose Shea Weber. I mean, that's a big hole in the blue line. But they still have 3 other, I think, real solid defensemen in Petrie and in Edmondson and in Sherratt. And, it's going to give an opportunity for some of the younger players to step up. And you add David Savard, who, he plays a style of game that's heavy and hard like Shea. He doesn't have the same high-end qualities, but, that was a nice signing. The depth of the group up front is real strong. It's not easy to lose Philip Deneau. We know what happened with Kotkaniemi. Christian Dvorak is a real nice addition. He's a really good centerman. He's a really good two-way centerman, and I think that Montreal Canadiens fans are going to like him. But I like the depth of the Montreal Canadiens. I like their ability to play different styles, and I think with Dominic starting the year with them as the head coach, and for them to come off of the success they had playing a style of game that suited their personnel, and with the additions they made, I think that they're going to be in the playoffs. I do think that they're good enough to be in the playoffs, and it's going to be interesting, the race. But if Carey Price and Jake Allen can play at the level that they performed at, Carey in the playoffs, Jake during the regular season, David Savard comes in and gives some real good play. Christian Dvorak, is a real good, I think, number 2 centerman. We know what Suzuki is. I don't see any reason why they can't be in the playoffs, for the 2022 playoff season. I think they're good enough. And I'll go back to Boston. Without Krejci and without Tuukka Rask, 2 significant players in their lineup, I think that levels the playing field significantly. And I think that gives Montreal a real strong opportunity to be a 4th team from the Atlantic Division to be in the playoffs.
Well, that's great. You're a lot higher on them than I think both of us are.
Yeah.
But
definitely just earned some brownie points there from Habs fans.
Yeah, exactly. And
well, last year at the beginning of the year, I picked Montreal after they made all their moves coming out of the bubble in 2020. I thought that everything they had done, I picked them to finish first in the division last year. I picked them to be one of the last 4 teams standing, along with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Colorado Avalanche, and Tampa Bay Lightning, just to go back to that prediction. That was the beginning of the season. So, maybe at the beginning of last year, I was more right than wrong. But, as I've joked about this, you guys, that, I was right until I was wrong, until I was wrong, and then I was right again. So, good luck with the predictions. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I do have a lot of fun with it. But you know what? Like, it's funny how a season can, unfold and cascade in different ways. Cascade towards success, cascade towards, real concern, and then a team can find its way back to success. And I think that's what Montreal did. But I like their team. And I don't think you can just look at it as just them in isolation. You look at who their competition is. And I think, considering who their competition is, let's not forget Detroit and Buffalo aren't very good. And everybody can talk about Ottawa, and I know where Ottawa is, and they got a lot of young players, but I don't see them at the same level as the Montreal Canadiens. So, again, it comes back now to competing against the Boston Bruins and finding a way to beat them out for that playoff spot or for that fourth spot. And I think they can do it.
Yeah, well, we're predicting every NHL team. So hopefully we don't get too much backlash. We don't have as many eyes on us. So I think
we'll be all right.
Yeah. And speaking of the Habs, one last question. They have Cole Caufield, a player who obviously the entire league's excited about. And speaking of him, who do you think is going to win the Calder this season?
Good question. Like, it really is, the Calder Trophy. You go and you look at it last year. I mean, I think that, most people looked at it and thought that Kirill Kaprizov, who did win it, and Alexis Lafreniere were the front runners. At this point in time, you start to consider, some of the rookies coming into the league, and there's going to be a couple of older rookies, but Cole, has an ability to do things that leads you to put them right at the top of the group as Calder Trophy contenders, because he's an elite goal scorer. He has clearly shown that. He's showing now that he's also more than just a goal scorer. He can make plays, which makes him even more dangerous goal scorer. He has a feel for the league, which I think will really give him a leg up, in this year's, Calder Trophy race. And him and Suzuki have some magic in terms of chemistry. So I put all those things together, and I've never bet against Cole Caufield, and I'm not going to start now.
Wow. There you go, Lou.
Well, Montreal fans, everyone who may have been upset with Craig in the past, I think that puts all that to bed now. But I want to move on now to Ottawa.
Yeah.
You talked about them a bit there. Clearly, you have them out of the playoff picture, but preview their upcoming season for us and some positives that Sens fans can see and where you see them finishing around.
Well, it's a younger group, right? And I think that, last year, they found some real good, strong team play, especially after the first month. The first month was really, poor for the Ottawa Senators. But then it's what I expected with DJ Smith as their coach. I thought they'd be a competitive team. I thought they'd be a hard out. And they proved to be that. But they're still a young team, and they're still a team that has some different holes in their lineup. And as long as those holes exist, it becomes harder and harder to beat the good teams. It doesn't mean you're not going to be competitive, because when you're well coached, you're going to be competitive, and I think they are. But probably the most significant thing for the Ottawa Senators is, what Matt Murray are they getting? Are they getting the Matt Murray that gave some glimpses? And let's be clear here. There was glimpses of what he had done in Pittsburgh. Only glimpses. He wasn't very good for a lot of the time. Zach Burke, the new goaltending coach, comes in, and there's hope that he can get Matt's game back on track. But if Matt's going to play, with only glimpses of his capability and his ability and what he showed in Pittsburgh, it's going to be a long year for the Ottawa Senators. It's going to be a real long year for the Ottawa Senators. And I think that, to ask a younger goaltender to get in there, and, you can ask a Philip Gustafson, you can ask him to get in there and do it. But when you're playing against really good teams that challenge you, it's good. It's good experience for a young goaltender, but I think it's a lot to ask of a young, untested goaltender to get into the net and support your play to be a playoff team. So can Matt Murray find his level? I think he can. Do I think he will? I have confidence that he will. I mean, his father passed away a few years ago, and that can affect people in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that you learn over time is that there's no guidebook for grieving, and there's no time frame. Some people grieve longer, and people grieve differently. And I think for Matt, who was very close with his dad, that and he's admitted to it. He's talked about the effect it's had on him. But I think that Matt is a competitor. The Ottawa Senators showed a lot of belief in him, and I do think he's got the capability. And but he's got to get back to that level. And if he does, they'll be really competitive, and they might be close to the playoffs. But I don't see them being able to have the runway in their game. And what I'm talking about, they need to go through the next stage where March they're playing games that can be meaningful. Like, they're competitive, they're close, when I say close, they might be 8 points out, but the games are competitive, right? I don't see them being able over an 82 game schedule to get in the playoffs. I just don't think they're tested enough. I don't think they have the strengths throughout their lineup to be able to beat out the teams that they need to beat out for a playoff spot.
They're also in a super tough division.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really hard for them to break through
right?
there. Yeah.
Like John, to me, that's it. Super tough division that makes it really, really challenging for them. And when you have those missing pieces, and I think they have an outstanding prospect group. I think they have, a lot of good young players in already on their team, and they have a really good prospect group. And I think the days are going to become a lot sunnier for Ottawa Senators fans going forward. But I don't think the playoffs are in the cards this year.
And we got another team here for you. The Winnipeg Jets had a good playoff up until they met the Habs. But again, the Habs were on that magical run, so maybe that was just a bit of pixie dust there. What do you think about them next season?
Well, one big thing that happened to the Winnipeg Jets was the loss of Mark Scheifele after Game 1. Mark Scheifele's a superstar in this league, and he drives so many different parts of their game. And, his absence, along with Montreal, just really, again, finding their game, just proved to be too much to overcome for the Winnipeg Jets. If you ask me today who I think has the best chance to be one of the last 4 teams standing from Canada, it's the Winnipeg Jets. I think their goaltender, I think Vasilevsky and Hellebuck are 1-2 as best goaltenders in the league. I think they've shown that over the last number of the years with their consistency that they have the capability to do so many strong things in the net. I think their blue line's improved. I think their blue line is significantly improved for last year. And the forward group is really, really good. Paul Stastny coming back, his versatility. A real key for them is going to be Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm a big fan of Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think that he had a real challenging season last year. And while hopes can be high, and just because you had an off year doesn't mean that those hopes can't still remain high. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have another off year. But that's up to Pierre-Luc Dubois to be able to, have everybody still see those hopes as high. And it's going to be based on his play. I think he's more than capable. And when you look at that forward group and their ability to score, their ability to attack, and they haven't lost very much in terms of their depth. And I think when you put all of that together for the Winnipeg Jets, I see them as Canada's best bet to be one of the last 4 teams standing.
That's a very fair point. Now that I think about
very high praise for the Jets, deservingly so. They've been pretty consistent here, even after they got their blue line almost decimated a couple years ago. So now on to the Calgary Flames, a team where they have this core group of guys there. They've gotten to the playoff. They've had some good regular seasons, never been able to really put it together in the playoffs. Craig, talk about the Flames for us.
Well, one of the things that I think's happened with the Calgary Flames is that they relied on too few for too much. And when you don't have success, ultimately those few players get a lot of criticism. Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, but their team to me didn't have the depth. They didn't have the quality of depth that you need to meet the challenges. I talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs in a similar regard. Daryl Sutter is an outstanding coach. And one thing that stands out for Daryl is that he is going to give players very clear direction on what their strengths are. And he's going to ask them to play to their strengths. He's not going to ask them to do more than they're capable of. He's crystal clear in his direction. He has a superb grasp of what a player's strengths are and what his game is. And he's going to ask you to play to that. And he's also going to say, you know what, I'm not going to ask you to do anything more than you're capable of, but you better not give me less. And that's significant for a head coach. And I think for Daryl coming in at the beginning of the year, I mean, there was a lot of hope last year when he took over that you could turn things and, get it on the right direction. And, coaches come in and think they can turn it around in a day. It takes longer than that. And I think it showed up last year with the Calgary Flames and with Daryl. I also believe the additions they made in the offseason were significant. They needed more hard speed deeper through their lineup, trading for Tyler Pitlick, signing Blake Coleman. Their blue line look has changed a little bit. Zadorov gives them a physical presence. Eric Goodbranson, he's a bottom pair defenseman, but Daryl is going to say, Eric, this is what we need you to do. Just go do it. Rasmus Anderson, Chris Tanev, it'll take pressure off of them. Valimaki and Hannafin are two really good defensemen. Michael Stone, Shillington, if that's your depth. I like it. Markstrom's a real good goaltender. Takes some of the pressure off of them. But I like the way their forward group is. If you ask the Calgary Flames, they would like to add one more skilled player to play in that top six. Well, everybody has a desire to add one more type of player. We all get that. But, how you do that, how you acquire that player, when you go and sign Blake Coleman, when you go and acquire Pitlick, they have some pretty good they have good players under good contracts. And, there was a lot of talk over the last little while about, you trade Gaudreau or Monahan. Trust me, you guys, it is easy to trade Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan. First of all, they're high-performing players. Second, they got great contracts. The problem is you can never get value back for those players based on their performance and their contract. Yeah, you can go trade for a $9 million player. That doesn't help you because it might not be as productive, and now the contract doesn't allow you to go deeper into your lineup. I think Brad Treliving did a really nice job. I think with Daryl, Kirk Muller coming into the group as an associate coach, I think is going to help Daryl. And I think it's going to really help some of their players with the details, the competitive details in the game. I don't think Sean Monahan's had coaching that he's going to get from Daryl and Kirk Muller. So I think I'm expecting a real rise in their game. I see them as a playoff team. And here's why. Because of the three California teams, they're no good. And so, and I don't think Vancouver's better than them. So I see them in the playoffs. Along with Edmonton and Vegas, and I don't mean to jump the question on Edmonton, but when the three California teams, LA's on the right track, but I don't think they're there yet. And Anaheim and San Jose are they're lottery. They're hoping for a lottery win come draft time.
I'm very pumped for the Flames. I think they've had a good roster for a couple years, and the fans are just itching for that roster to break out.
Yeah, move to their rival though now.
Yeah, the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, I said that they're a playoff team. They're a playoff team because of 97 and 29 alone. I mean, they're so good. I mean, they're top players. We know that. I like what Ken Holland did in the offseason. I think, Ken Holland made a lot of really good moves to take some of the, I'm not going to say the pressure, but to spread the burden around. For the Edmonton Oilers. And, Dylan Holloway, it was announced today that he's going to miss 3 months. He has to get his wrist, another procedure done to his wrist to get him back to full health. But you add Zach Hyman. I mean, that is such a significant move for the Edmonton Oilers because he's such a good player and he can do so many different things for a team and for the players he plays with. He gives the coach massive flexibility. I think that what they've done on the blue line. Tyson Barrie had a nice season. They lose Adam Larson. I think a big thing for the addition of Duncan Keith, and it's not just Duncan Keith, what he's going to do on the ice. It's also Duncan Keith, when he can go and spend time, whether that's off days, whether that's during the game, whether it's between periods with McDavid, with Draisaitl, with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. He's played with the best of the best. He's had success that's been, unparalleled for a player of his ilk. So, when he goes and says to the team or to an individual, this is what we have to do. This is how it has to work. This is what we need from you. That's meaningful. And so we can look at where Duncan's at. He's not the same Duncan Keith he was when he was a dominant defenseman in the league. But I think his impact can be really, really strong. We talked about Shea Weber. Shea Weber is a Hall of Famer, in my view. Shea Weber is not the same player last year that he was 3-4 years ago. But you cannot tell me that he doesn't have a material impact on the team. Not just through some of his play, but also, hey, this is what we got to do, and I'm going to show you the way. And that's what Duncan's going to be able to do. And I think that that's really going to help them. But the depth that Ken Holland, the additions he made up front, I think are going to really help this team move forward and be better balanced come playoff time. Because, we know McDavid and Draisaitl can score, and they score like very few others in the National Hockey League. But to be able to have other players that can do some heavy lifting and can get the other team off balance and get the other team unsettled and create different advantages in a game plan, especially come playoff time, is really important. And I think Ken Holland was able to do that. And I think there should be every reason for Edmonton Oilers fans to be excited. And, they're at a stage now where, it's not about making the playoffs anymore. It's about how deep can you go in the playoffs? And, Mike Smith, he had a great year last year. He also needs to, come back and have a similar type season, but maybe not at the same level if the team is stronger, like we expect it to be. But he can't have a subpar season, because a subpar season is going to be really damaging to the Edmonton Oilers. A subpar goaltending is going to be damaging to the Edmonton Oilers.
It's good to see a more positive take on that Duncan Keith trade.
Yeah, a lot of people were pretty harsh on that move, but
yeah,
I don't know. Duncan Keith.
I'll share a story with you guys. And, a former Montreal Canadian, Mike Keane. And Mike was with us in Dallas. And I can tell you this about Mike. Mike is arguably one of the very best leaders I've ever been around in my entire career. And, that's what he was able to do and how he carried himself was so significant. Things that nobody sees. We traded for Mike in 1998. And the first game of that playoff series against the San Jose Sharks, we lost Joe Nieuwendyk to a season-ending knee injury. We were the President's Trophy winners that year. Mike Modano, top player. And, we're playing, and San Jose's a really good team, coached by Daryl Sutter at the time. Really good team. Hard team, competitive team. We're in San Jose. I don't know if it was game 3 or 4. And Mike Modano is, feeling anxious. He's feeling anxious. He feels the game's kind of back and forth. Nobody's getting an edge. And it's halfway through the game, and Mike Keane reaches over and puts his hand on his arm. And he says, Mike, just keep doing what you're doing. You don't have to do more. You're not going to do less, but don't think you have to do more. Just keep playing. We got a better team here. Mike said it just made him relax, because he said somewhere along the line, Mike Keane knew that I was anxious and that I wanted to do more. And, those types of things, to sit down in a game in November, and there's going to be moments in the regular season where you might not be really up for a game as a team, but a guy like Duncan Keith knows there's games that are going to be critically important to building your team's strength. Guess what? Connor McDavid doesn't know. Duncan Keith does know. But if Duncan Keith can relay that and convey that and tell players, hey, relax, calm down, you got to be better, whatever it is. Yeah, we can look at the analytics and we can look at the on ice and we can look at what his salary is, right? The addition of Duncan Keith is about something far bigger than Duncan Keith. And I think he can deliver. And that's why I share that story about Mike Keane.
No, that's
pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. But we'll move on now to the last team that we haven't touched yet. My favorite NHL team, Craig. I'm a diehard Canucks fan. So I heard you mention there that you have them behind Calgary, Edmonton. A little tough to hear, but I want you to preview their season as well as Vasily Podkolzin. When Podkolzin was drafted, I was very excited about all of the American players on that stacked national development team. They go with Podkolzin, and I wasn't very excited, but I was listening to I listened to the NBC draft, I listened to the Sportsnet draft, and you said positive things about him, and it made me more high on him than I was initially. So I want your thoughts on him.
Okay, well, I think the Vancouver Canucks are more than capable of being in the playoffs. Well, will it be easy to get into the playoffs? No, but Thatcher Demko has clearly shown he's a number one goalie. So I have no concerns in that regard. To me, their blue line was one that just wasn't built very well. Jacob Markstrom cleaned up a lot of the mess. Thatcher Demko cleaned up a lot of the mess. They were literally and figuratively safety nets for porous defense. I like what they went and did in the offseason. I think that we know how good Quinn Hughes is. So let's just take Quinn Hughes out of the equation. I like the addition of Oliver Ekman-Larsson as well. Oliver is a player that I think will benefit from not having to be the go-to guy. And I think that it'll also help Quinn Hughes. It'll take some of the pressure off of him, power play. But Oliver's a real effective player. Then, like Tucker Poolman, real good depth defenseman. Jack Rathbone is going to be somebody who I feel is going to be able to come in and play. And there's a difference between playing and contributing. I think when you look at those different types of qualities, I think he's ready to come in and contribute. So when I start to look at the blue line, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But, when you have Travis Hamonic playing, he should be playing down the lineup. You have Luke Shen, who comes in and plays competitive at a good contract. I think the blue line is improved. Now let's go up front. Podkolzin is a player. Is there any problem with Pettersson or JT Miller or Brock Besser? Not at all, and there never has been. What Jim Benny went and did in the offseason in acquiring Connor Garland, in acquiring Jason Dickinson, and you now look at Höglander last year, you look at Podkolzin this year, I really like the depth. I like the makeup of their team. Höglander and Podkolzin are similar in that they are more than capable of playing with really good players. They're competitive, they're smart, they're hard to play against. And I think when I start to look at that forward group, I see a forward group that is going to be able to play a lot more in the offensive zone and not have to play in the defensive zone. That's going to take pressure off of your blue liners. The blue line's improved. Like I said, it's not ideal. If it was a little bit better, you might say, hey, listen, there's no reason why this team can't be in the playoffs. But that being said, I think that they have the qualities to be competing for a playoff spot. And again, I'm going to go back to the three California teams. To me, that takes three teams out. And I'm not so convinced on the Seattle Kraken. I think the Seattle Kraken, have the benefit of being able to draft, similarly to the Vegas Golden Knights. And we know what the Vegas Golden Knights have done. It was wonderful and whatnot. But I'm not making the same bet on the Seattle Kraken. I think they're competitive. And I think, like Vancouver, Calgary, perhaps, they're going to be competing for a spot. But I'm not giving it away to them right now, and I'm not taking anything away from the Vancouver Canucks. And I think there's real potential for them to push their game and push their level of play higher and be in the playoffs. Is it a given? No, but I don't think it's a given that they're out either. I think they are the proverbial bubble team, going into, at this point in time.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely a bounce back candidate in terms of the teams in the NHL.
Yeah, they need one. Honestly, there's a lot of pressure on that team to
Yeah.
come back and perform. The fans are definitely hungry for it after they got a little taste of it in the bubble in 2020. But Craig, before we wrap up, just a couple fast rapid fire questions for you. Not meant to just fun questions. Favorite arena to watch a hockey game?
Favorite arena to watch a hockey game? Oh, Bell Center by a mile. It's by a mile. It's the passion of the Montreal Canadiens fans, builds throughout the day. And then you get into the Bell Center and it's, an hour before game time, it's already rocking. Everybody's excited. To me, the Montreal Canadiens playing at the Bell Center is not a game. It's an event. And it's an event that matters to people. And that passion is there right through the day, leading right up to and into the game. Honestly, there's a lot of great arenas. None better for me than the Bell Center.
All right. Favorite World Junior Championship won by Canada?
The favorite win?
Yeah.
The favorite win. Let me think here. I'm straightforward with you. 2020 in the Czech Republic when they were down 3-1 to Russia, and Dale Hunter and who was coaching the team, he just never wavered. That was a real special. I thought a real special win for Team Canada. I thought that 2006 in Vancouver, following the 2005, just domination in Grand Forks. Brent Sutter coached both those teams. They were two very different teams. That 2006 team, just really found, a real camaraderie on the ice. So I would say those two. But if I had to go back longer in time, I would go right back to 1988 in Moscow. It was the Soviet Union at that time. Jimmy Waite put on one of the greatest goaltending performances ever at the World Junior Tournament, ever. That Soviet team was one of the best. Canada was not a favorite. And right in Moscow, right at the Luzhniki Ice Arena, Jimmy Waite went in there and stole the gold medal from the Soviet Union. So those would be the three that stand out the most in my mind.
Nice.
Wow.
Those are. I'm too young to remember 2006 and certainly 1988, but I remember freaking out over 2020. That's for sure. But
well, it was a neat thing too, because again, and the reason I bring up 2020, they didn't go in as a favorite. Like 2005, they were a favorite. Other years, they were favorites. And you just go, okay, yeah, let's just anoint them. They're going to win, right? And then there's a lot of different special moments. But to me, like in the 88, obviously, I was young too, but Jimmy Waite was like, at that time, they'd had the punch up in Piastany the year before, and both the Soviet Union and Canada had been disqualified for the World Junior Tournament. Canada was well on their way to winning the gold medal. And then they, everything erupted. They were disqualified. The Russians were not going to get a medal. They were frustrated. They took it out on the Canadians. Well, Team Canada came back the very next year, right in the Soviet Union, right in the heart of Moscow, and they took their revenge back on the Soviet Union. So it was and it was unexpected. It wasn't one of those things. One of those times we went, oh, this is a team that should win or is the favorite to win. Like last year, Canada rolled along, and right up until that last game, and when the U.S. played exceptionally well, perfect, really. Canada looked like a team that nobody could beat.
So last rapid fire question here for you, Craig, because we're about to get timed out by Zoom here. Who is your dark horse Stanley Cup contender?
Dark horse. Okay, that's a really, really good one. Okay, so it's not Florida, it's not Carolina. My dark horse Stanley Cup Did you say contender or winner? Contender.
Contender.
Same thing, yeah.
Contender.
Can I pick two?
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Number one is the Winnipeg Jets, and number two, because we're talking dark horse here, and number two, and I don't know if you can really call them a dark horse because they've been to the conference semifinal the last 2 years, but the New York Islanders.
Yeah. Wow.
Those are two good picks.
choices.
Yeah.
The Islanders is a team that goes deep every year, and then the Jets, as you explained, they got a lot of good pieces. But thank you so much, Craig, for coming on. Like, we've both been watching you on our TVs since we've been like 6 years old, so it's been pretty surreal to. It's been pretty surreal to talk with you.
Yeah. Hey, I'm really glad you reached out. I'm really glad that we could make this happen. And you know what? When the time suits you guys again, reach out. I'll be happy to join you again. And you know what? But and don't be hesitant to chirp on predictions. I mean, it's all fair in predictions.
All right. Hopefully, if this video does well, like we hope for, well, you'll have enough comments doing that for us. But anything else from you?
I'm good.
No? Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Craig. And yeah, cheers. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.